everybody. I'm asking Mechila for being seated. What I'd like to do, I want to begin by reading a selection from the Tzemach Tzedek about Nisyonos. Our topic tonight is about the tests that we have in life. Every week we learn something from the Alter Rebbe. We'll go back to the Maimer of the Alter Rebbe. And I just wanted to read an excerpt from the Tzemach Tzedek. So on the page that has a base, right, that has ois base on the page. So about 10 lines into 10 or 12 lines in, there's a line that begins with the word viram. And then there's a period and vihine. And I want to begin right there from the vihine. So he says, vihine kama mine bechinas nisoyon niskuru b'Torah. There are different forms of tests that are mentioned, that are brought in the stories of the Torah. Ha'alef, an example right at the beginning of the Torah, is v'holikim nisa es Avraham, the Parshas Vayera, that Hashem tested Avraham Avinu. So what was the form of the test? So here, the way he presents it is v'hu limser nafshay al tzivui Hashem. Hashem asked him to do something that was very difficult. It was a commandment to do something very tough. And that's the Nisayon. Habeiz, the second form, is what we find is Visham Nisohu. When the Jewish people left Mitzrayim, they came to a place where there was no water. And Hashem led them there. And He led them into difficult conditions. So he says, what is the Nisayon in that case? V'hu inyan im yekablu hayisurim beratzon. Will they accept the circumstances that Hashem offered them, or they're going to complain? Dahainu shelo yisloinenu al heder amayim. Don't complain. One form of, some people are more fortunate and some are less fortunate. To complain about being less fortunate is not being oimid b'nisayon. It's not passing the test. And he says, "V'chein me'inyan zeh nisayon de'iyov." The test that Eov had was he should have been quiet, at least not to complain. He complained. He was nichshal. He didn't pass the test. Then there's hagimel. There's a third form. The third form relates to mitzvahs. In other words, the second form is life conditions. A person is more wealthy, less wealthy, more comfortable. They live in a nice climate and a cold climate, whatever the challenges are. But then there are the tests that are part of the Torah mitzvahs. Oh, you have to do mitzvahs and you have to wear tzitzis. It's the summer and only kosher food. I'm in an airport. It smells so good. All the mitzvahs that relate. Shabbos, from the morning already we're worried. My flight's going to be delayed. Where am I going to end up? All the mitzvahs create conditions of nisayon. So he says, Ki leva'avur na'asois eschem boha elikim. Hashem is coming to test you. And let's remember, like we'll learn in the Maimer, that the word na'asois also means to uplift you. Through the tests, you will be uplifted. So this particular pasuk is written Gabe Matan Torah. Upirish Ramban. The Ramban says that these conditions of difficulty that are created out of the demands of mitzvah are mamish like a nisayon for a tremendous temptation. Shezel nisayon mamish. It's a real test. Im yosifu avoida al gemulas hatoiva. With the fact that Hashem says, if you do the right thing, I'll reward you. Is that going to be enough to motivate me? Will I do more? Am I going to do something about it? Sometimes in school, you make an initiative. You say, if whoever does this, they're going to get, and somehow the kids don't. They don't bite. Nobody responds. They're not interested, right? No one takes to it. So Hashem is saying, if you do mitzvahs, you're going to be rewarded, and you're not going to have the ills of Mitzrayim, and it's going to be amazing. No, so someone taking the bait, or people are just sitting back. So he says it's literally like an Nisoyon. Then he says Hadalid, the fourth type of test we find in the Torah is Inyan Nisoyon, the David HaMelech Olav HaShalom. David was tested by temptation. Im Yishber Taives HaYetzer. Can he overcome the temptation? K'sheyave Maisa Liyadei, when the circumstances will be there to do an Aveira. And that's also an Nisoyon. Nikra Gamkin, David, what did he say? Bechoneni v'naseni. David HaMelech said, Hashem, test me. I'm so loyal, I'm so dedicated. Now we say, don't bring me to a test. So that's the fourth form against the impulses of the Yetzer Hara. Then there's Hahei. The fifth is a test to faith, not a test of temptation or circumstances of mitzvahs, or will we be motivated to do the right thing, but do I believe in Hashem? Is this true? Is the Torah true? Inyan Nisoyon Haniskar Kan, the one that's mentioned here in this week's Parsha, in Parshas Re'eh. Uba ha'ois v'hamoifes, comes along someone who's he's a sorcerer. He seems to have powers, right? We look out in the world and we see someone who does everything wrong, and somehow they're gifted. They have hatzlacha. What does it mean, hatzlacha? They're a success. They have fame. They seem to have some charm or some energy that transcends nature. Like all of us, we operate by ordinary circumstances. But this guy, somehow the world gives him like miraculous results. Oh, this person, the guy, whatever it is, he opened a company and then he sold it for $50 million. And there's not there's not a righteous bone in his body. How does he get that kind of response from the world, like a magical response, so that's the one that's that's the antithesis of piety. There you have moifsin. They're living some kind of successful life. So the Torah refers to that person as oisu moifis. So, there's something great happening there. And he says, why is that? Ki Menasa, Hashem is testing you. V'hu inyan hanisoyon. What kind of test is that? Sheyagbir ha'emuna b'Hashem. In order for me to deal with the way it makes me feel, I have to intensify my faith. To say, no, I'm doing the right thing. This is what, this is it. V'lo yisnaneya me oisu moifis to avodah zarah. He's not going to move from avodah zarah. Right? Imagine, right? He's not saying this, but think about it. Someone's married to a person, and then they meet another woman who they think would have created such better circumstances for their life that it would put a doubt in their choice. What did I do? You think this was the right thing? I don't know. I start second guessing. Maybe this is the wrong thing for me. So a person chooses a life of Yiddishkeit, of Torah, of following Hashem, then they look out and they see somebody leading a different life who's being more successful. And they say, wait a second, is this the right thing? That I'm following the Eibishter, that I'm closed on Shabbos, that I'm, so that's a nisoyon of faith, not a nisoyon of temptation. And that requires a special type of this lashon, yagbir ho'emuna. And then he brings v'nisoyin de gabe man, the nisoyin that we find in the Torah about the man, hagam shalechura, hu al derech nisoyin habeis, even though it seems to be the conditions of Torah, or the conditions of water. Hashem took them out and there was no water. There was no food. Why is that different? Hashem is causing you, He's bringing a Nisoyan. What's the la'anoid? Yeah. So he says, no, it's not the same like the water. Ach ef shaloimar klal came. She'akosov mishabeach haman. The Torah says the man was amazing. V'taimek etzapichis bidvash. What was the test? Hanisoyin hoyo shelo yashiru mimenu ad boiker. To rely completely on Hashem and not to have anything in the bank for tomorrow. V'lo yiu miktani amuna. So lefizehu gamken al derech nisoyin dekan. It's also about faith. It's about relying on Hashem. So here he brings 5 different forms of tests that we find in Torah, and each one in a different way. These tests they require different type of resilience. They require different type of approaches in order to overcome the Nisoyin. Okay, now I want to switch back to the Likutei Torah and take a few minutes to discuss a little bit outside what's going on here, what the Rebbe is saying. In the Likutei Torah, we're in the section, we're on Devarim, and it's Yutes, page Yutes, here. Oh, it opened literally, okay, right here, Achrei, okay. To take a few minutes to discuss this outside. Okay, let's take a minute. Let's speak about something, about a certain depth in Hasidus for a moment. Hasidim talk about being connected or attached to a Rebbe. The word that they use is hiskashrus, kesher, to have a connection. In this week's Parsha, the Torah, in last week's Parsha, the Pasuk says that we should have dveikus to Hashem. Right? We should have dveikus. I know we use the word cleave, but maybe someone has a better word, no?
In spoken Hebrew, it's like a glue.
Like a glue, yeah. It's also attachment, but kesher is like a knot.
Yeah.
Right? And dveikus is like glue.
Side by side.
Yeah. So his kasha is like intertwined, let's say, and dveikus is side by side. Philosophically, in the abstract for a moment, in concept, dveikus, Hasidus likes to use the analogy of light. When you turn off the light, nothing remains. There's no remnant of what was here. I remember once I was speaking to someone who he said he participated in Rabbi Yoel Khan's shiurim for many years. And he would come home and his wife would say, "What did he say?" And he would say, I can't repeat. And she would say, "So what do you do? What do you do?" He's like, "I'll tell you. When he talks, it's like the heaven opens. It's like I see it. It's so clear. I get it. But then when he leaves, the window closes. I'm left with nothing. I can't." The concept of dveikus is that I'm only strong as long as whatever empowers me is present. If I turn around and my coach is stepped away, I feel lost. I need whatever gives me energy, I need them there. I can't turn around and look in the corner and my coach left. I need him by my hand. The idea of kesher as opposed to dveikus is that I'm my own person and I internalize the energy and I trained. And now I could walk away and I could run my Chabad house. I don't have to be. It's not like I have to daven with the Rebbe in the morning, otherwise I'm out of commission. So when we use the term kesher, the kesher is I'm connected. My values are the values of the Rebbe, but I'm an independent. I'm an entity. I'm an independent entity. I have my own franchise. Dveikus, I'm nothing. I can't do anything, right? Like let's say we have in the world of in many professions, in order to become credentialed, you need to have time that you're supervised. So you have to have supervised hours. And then once you have your full training, then you could go off on your own. So the hiskashrus is you could go off on your own. The dveikus, without a supervisor, you're done. You're totally dependent. So when we talk about our connection to Hashem, many of us have our frumkeit, our commitment is a little dependent. Right? When a person wants to be Nizgayer, if someone wants to convert to Yiddishkeit, today you go to a Bezdin, one of the questions they ask you is, where do you live? Say, oh, I live in Arkansas. Say, I'm sorry, there's no Jewish life there. In other words, as a condition, you have to be in a Jewish environment. Yeah, but I know some lone Jew who lives in Arkansas. Yeah, but he's a Jew, right? You need conditions that are. So for many people to be, we see this sometimes. A person goes away from the environment, and suddenly their Yiddishkeit becomes weak. It becomes weaker. It's not the same. So in that case, there's an advantage to being dependent, but there's also a disadvantage. When we talk about the point of Nisyonos, Hashem tests us. The idea of being tested is in order to break our dependence. And becoming independent is a form of strength that requires a deeper commitment. And I want to just present it in this way, that to be dependent means that Hashem gives me conditions that are how do I say it? They're tailor-made for me. I feel that I could deal with it.
Favorable.
He's adjusting. Hashem is adjusting. He's providing me with just the right. It's about, if we in Hasidus we very often we bring examples of like a Rav and a Talmud. So in the idea of a Rav, who when the Talmud walks in, he does a little research before he starts teaching him. He's like, listen, how much exposure do you have to Hasidus? Did you learn anything before? Did you ever go to yeshiva? You have experience with this text? Oh, now that I know, let's learn. You have someone else who's like, thank you for coming, we're going to be learning Likutei Torah. Right? So a person whose relationship with Hashem is such that Hashem provides him with an environment of Torah. Yiddishkeit works for him. He went to yeshiva, he was successful in yeshiva, he managed. Somebody was put his arm around him. He came out, he found a shidduch, whatever it is, he has children, he got a job. So all of that, Hashem, so to speak, tailor-made conditions that encouraged him to be a frum Jew. So Hashem's presentation is like a modified presentation. You have a person who could survive under any conditions. They don't need tailor-made conditions. Hashem, in Hashem's pure form, in a pshitus, and this person, they could remain committed, they could remain dedicated. And that's this force that through a nisoyin we become stronger. Now, one of the things, just before we'll start reading inside in a minute, we talk about the difference, the contrast between hearing and seeing, Riya and Shmiya. When a person sees something, it becomes undeniable. I saw it. It doesn't matter what you're going to tell me. You're going to disprove it. I saw it with my own eyes. That's it. Case closed. To experience godliness in that kind of way, Hashem is so true to me, it's not an idea. I feel my experience with Hashem is like a vision. It's compared to a vision. So I'm steadfast, I'm committed, no matter what. And that's the way that the Pasuk refers to Hashem as to see Hashem. That's what it means, right? What are we going to see? And das, to know and to see, are equated. What do we say on Simchas Torah? Ata horeisa ladas. You showed me so that I know. There's a certainty. When I'm certain about the Eibishter, I could stay focused despite tests. Let's read a little bit inside now. We could speak about more things. The word acharei, right? The first word of this mimer, acharei, it doesn't mean follow Hashem. It means the back. Acharei means I'm not being, he doesn't look me in the eye. He avoids me. I'm trying to feel connected, but he avoids me. I'm trying, I need some help. I need something I could depend on. And wherever I look, he's just not there. That's the acharei. I'm being shown the back. And he says, acharei, if we keep at it when we're faced by such a challenge, teilechu, it will bring progress and growth. It brings halicha. That's where love comes from. But so let's read inside. So this is a pasuk in this week's parsha. Acharei Hashem leikechem teilechu. We should follow the path of Hashem. Va'isei tira'u v'goymer. We should be in reverence of Hashem. Parat HaKosov, the pasuk outlines Shisha Dvarim. There are 6 different ways in Avodas Hashem. There's Teilechu, to walk in Hashem's path. There's Tira'u, to be in awe. There's Tishmeru, to observe. There's Uvekoiloi Tishmo, to listen to the voice. To listen to his voice, which means to study Torah. Va'osei ta'avoidu, there's to be a servant. Right? Service. And then there's uboisid bakun, dveikus, attachment, to be attached to Hashem. And in the Maimer, he will discuss each one, the value of each one. I just want to say that, just to speak about these, since we're not going to finish the Maimer inside, that avoida is very much connected to action, like with our hands and feet, to do what we need to do, to say, like, there are these expressions about, like your feet should know what to do. Forget about your mind, just do the right thing. Uveisid bakun is that my emotions, my thoughts, my speech, I'm completely connected. Right? In other words, many people like to give examples from marriage. We could also give examples from the classroom. It depends what's current by everyone. What sugya is current. You have a student, they do what's right. They come on time. They open their book. They follow with their finger on the place. But they're not so motivated. You have a student, they're so into it. Even during recess, they come ask a question. They write down the question they want. That's the Vekus. The Vekus is, that's where I am. That's my desire. I care about this. I'm not a 9 to 5er. I'm in it. So hine maksiv le'ilmine. What does it say before these 6 ways of practice? It says ki menasa Hashem eleikechem eschem ladas. Hashem is testing you. Why is He testing you? To know. Ulahavin. So the Alter Rebbe asks, let's understand, Mahu Kiminasa, what's this test business? In other words, Hashem doesn't know. Hashem knows. He's going to express it in a few minutes, in a few lines. Ha'inyan. So here's the idea, the biur. Kihine haneshama koydem miridasa ba'olam hazeh. The neshama as a spiritual entity before being in a physical body. And it stood in a state of bittul. It stood in a state of humility before Hashem, completely in awe, without any agenda. Chai Hashem, asher amadati lefonov. Complete nullification. V'sham, in that state, it experienced the revelation of godliness. As a spiritual entity, it experienced Hashem. But ve'achakach, yarda b'seis ramadreges ba'olam hazeh, it came down to a physical world. This world is a lowly world. It's a olam hashofel. And to be here is liyas behester panim. We don't see godliness. Godliness is concealed. And we feel distant from spirituality. Ve'richuk mokim me'or Hashem. We're far away from seeing the light. V'tachlis yiridasa, why does it come down to this world? Hi b'shvil hanisyonos. I want to say, we learn about yiridas haneshama in many ma'amorim. But in this ma'amor, there's a punch. In other words, the world, even in Basi Lagani, he says, you come down to this world, it's a physical world. You don't see godliness. The body itself conceals further. Right? There's a nefesh habahamis. But he says, it's not enough to be in a physical world. You also need tests. It has to get even darker. It's not dark enough. He says, B'shvil hanisyonos, and he's going to describe the tests. Sheboyin laha'adam, which we encounter in life. Sheheim mehester panim. They come from an even further obstruction. Hashem is hiding even more. V'yestalkus, chayis, hashefa. Hashem takes away shefa. Shefa is the adjusted life. Shefa is when you feel cared for. Shefa is like the teacher who sits down and says, so how much, have you learned Chassidus before? That's Shefa. The contrast between Shefa and Or. Hashem takes away what you feel was the tailored delivery of energy and positivity. He says, B'minias, he holds back Brias Haguf. He holds back health. Now, I'm not talking about something caused by unhealthy lifestyles. That's Bechira. A person chose to smoke or whatever it is. Here he's talking about Brias Haguf, something that happens without. You walk into the doctor and he says, we don't know why. This is a type of condition that we don't know why. We don't have, there's no data about why you have this condition. Or minias momain. A person, he just can't earn a living. He works hard like everybody else. Why? Other people work hard and then somehow he can't get it together. So that's additional darkness. And the purpose of these things is kedei lahastir al v'chayes Hashem. The little bit of light that we may have when we see success in Olam Hazeh is withdrawn. There's a hester on the chayes of Hashem, u'kedushasa yizbarich, V'lias meinea mibayis umichutz. There's an inner and outer obstruction, meaning a personal obstruction. In my own heart, I feel like Hashem is hiding from me. La'adam shabali eskarev l'Hashem. Someone who comes, he wants to be a frum Jew. He's doing the right thing. He's closing the store on Shabbos, and so on and so forth. He wants to come closer. He's he's serving Hashem, and then and suddenly the channels are blocked. And what does he see? He sees the people who do wrong, they're being matzliach. Somehow they're successful. V'zehu, this is the meaning of this week's parsha when it says, Ubaha eis v'hameifis. The pasuk refers to the Navi Sheker as a wonder, as a meifis. It's a miracle. This miracle comes and says, Neilcha, let's go bow to an idol. Koloimar, Shesham Giluya eis v'hameifis. That guy who defies Hashem is being successful. V'hagboas karnom. They're proud and they're positioned high up in the hierarchy. V'hagdola, v'ribui hachayis. They're sustained. V'lachein oimrim. That's why the goyim say, Yadeinu dafka rama. Our hand, we have the upper hand. We have the outstretched arm. Umagbiin kanesha kinom, and they're like an eagle. They're flying high. So he says, "V'tzarich adam is gabrus yaseira." It requires tremendous strength, lamid b'nesoyin, to withstand such a test. Shaloi lochosh l'shum maniach chas v'shalom, not to be held back, not to feel reservations when there's a maniyah. And he says, "B'shvil kach boyin lo yanusiyanis." That's why they're there. Kedei sheyazgaber aleim, that you should overcome them. Kedei she'al yedei kain yavei. This brings you l'mailas umadregas lodas. That's when you say, you know what? I used to have discussions late at night. If I believe in God, me and my friends, we would, back in college, have discussions. I do believe, I don't believe, this type and that type. Says, now I'm certain. I believe. It's like Hashem is just real to me. That's the way it is. The Hainu sheyeheh etzloi sheyeheh b'chinas das ve'avsaga ve'hargosha b'yizbarich. He should sense and feel and know Hashem b'chinas re'iyah, like he sees him. Ve'hasaga, to understand and see. That's what das is. Das means it's clear to me like I see it. Kidiksiv, ata horeisa ladas. Shehu bechinas, what the pasuk says, umipsari echze, from my flesh I see. Echze mamash, literally I see. Now in the Hagav, the Tzemach Tzedek, he goes back a little bit and he explains the pasuk. Bazeh yuva, now we'll understand the pasuk. Ki menasa eschem, that Hashem is testing you ladas. The Ein Pirush HaPasuk, Ladas HaYishchem Oyavim, that Hashem needs to know if you believe in Him. No, Hashem, Sheyeh HaKadosh Baruch Hu Yodeya, that Hashem needs to know. Da'atu l'nisoyin hu tzarich kedei ladas. Does Hashem have to test you in order to know? Hashem knows. V'halei hakoil golui lefanav yizbarich. The idea beroish, Hashem knows in advance. Ma sheyeh b'soif, what will be at the end. Umar sheyivcher adam, he knows what you're going to choose. Now the Tzemach Tzedek brings three different ideas from different texts in Chazal about what's the purpose of a nisoyin. And what he's saying is that all the Mefarshei HaTorah, they all really had that same question. Of course Hashem knows. What's the meaning of this pasuk? So he says, I am b'medrash Rabbah, Parshas Vayera, Reish Perek, it should be Nun Hey, it's not Nun Daled. So in Parsha Nun Hey, by the Akedah, he says, so what the Medrash says, why did Hashem test Avram Avinu? Hashem doesn't know. what Avram is going to do. He doesn't know. He says the reason he tested him was for other people. That's what the Medrash says. The Medrash says Hashem is going to reward Avram. Down the road, he's going to make him wealthy, he's going to give him generations, whatever. People are going to say, hey, what did he do to deserve that? So Hashem says, what do you mean, what did he do? You saw what happened? He was ready to bring his child. Did you see all the tests, the 10 tests that he went through? So the purpose of the test is not for Hashem, it's for others. And the way the Medrash describes it, it's for Midas Hadin. When we start making a cheshbon, when someone starts, you say, wait a second, this guy he can't get, and the other guy what do you mean? He said, did you see what he did? You saw what the other guy did? You see? So the purpose of the Nisyonos is to show the world the qualities of the person. That's the Medrash. Then there's the Ramban. The Ramban has a different. Ramban, the Pirush HaChumash, Seif Pashas Vayera, the Ramban by the Akedah, Pirush, he explained like this: She'anisoyin hu k'dei liyos la'adam schar ma'aseh tov v'lo schar leif tov levad. Hashem knows what's in Avram's heart, but to reward Avram for being sincere in his heart is not the same like for rewarding him for acting that way. Right? If I know you're a supermensch, you're a great guy, how do I know? Because I know you. But if I give you a chance to show that you're a super guy, so of course you always were, but to reward someone for acting that way, for living it out, right? For practicing the way they are, that's a whole different schar. So that's what the Ramban says. The Ramban says, Hashem wanted Avram, I want to reward you for a ma'aseh tov, not for a leif tov. Oh, you have a good heart. Let's bring it to action. That's the Ramban. Again, what's bothering the Ramban? This question, Hashem needs a test. No, he wants Avram Avinu, show us your ability. Give us a demonstration. So that's the Ramban. Then there's the Zohar. Ayin the Zohar Vayera. It's funny. I don't know why that the sources here are not. They all need a little tweaking. The Zohar says that it says in the pasuk that Hashem tests tzaddikim. So he says, imagine. I'm just thinking about an example. My wife and I, when we got married, we went to buy pots. Whatever. We went to a store. So anyway, we come into the store, and they had at that time the shatterproof was new. They had this new, the shatterproof. So we go into the store and we're looking at this thing, and the salesperson, like to do a shtick, takes this the lid of the pot and smashes it like in a sudden. We were startled. So, you see, shatterproof. Oh, okay. So now we're going to buy it. So when you want to test someone, the strength, you want to show someone how strong something is. You don't bring a weak character into the picture. Like you're going to give a Russia a test. What's going to happen? You're going to poke right through it. He's going to fall apart. So you want to show how a Nisayon works. You bring a tzaddik, you bring Yosef, and you give him a test, and then you see shatterproof. That's where you see the power. So that's the Zohar. The Zohar says Hashem is showing His koyach. You see how I endure in the world? Who's going to show it? Tzaddikim. Tzaddikim are going to be a covet for Hashem, the way they're going to live their life. So that's the Zohar's explanation. Yeah. So if that's the case, all of these In other words, all these Mefarshim they're addressing, Hashem needs to know, Hashem knows. Well, Lefi Masha Kasavti, according to what I wrote, says that Asa Shapir, now there's no question. The Pirush Ladas is not that Hashem should know, but that you should know. Shal Yidei Ze Yumshach Bechinas Hadas B'Nefesh Ha'Adam. I want to go back to what I said at the beginning, so not that if when we withstand the test, our own commitment to Hashem, we see that it's how strong it is, how powerful it is. That we're not only frum when we're living in a frum environment. You know, I heard some years back, like 20 years ago, more, I don't know exactly when it was, the Syrian shul on Ocean Parkway, they invited Rabbi Mordechai Eliyahu to come speak for a dinner. It's a very chashuv shul. And they brought him, he traveled first class, you know, something like that from Eretz Yisrael. And on the plane there was some Arab, a sheikh or I don't know, also a very famous guy. And on the plane, Rabbi Mordechai Eliyahu spoke Arabic. And he grew up in Morocco, or in Baghdad, you know, whatever it was. He spoke fluent Arabic. So on the plane, he overheard this guy telling his misharis they were eating not halal meat, and he made some kind of comment that above the clouds there's no God. Like it's okay, you know. Then when they arrived in New York, when they landed, so there was a whole delegation to see the Arab, to welcome this Arab guy. He was some kind of star. And Rabbi Eliyahu just walked by, you know, without giving respect. So people who were there, they made a fuss. They're like, you know, it's okay for you to give respect to other faiths. You know, why you... So he turned around, and in Arabic, he repeated to him what he said on the plane, you know, about the godlessness, so to speak. And he continued walking. Then later, when he came to the dinner, he repeated the story, and it was like standing ovation. They were so excited, and he was repeating in Arabic, and the kids, it was a great simcha. But right, so the idea, some people they're looking, maybe they'll be above the clouds, you know, maybe they'll go out of the community, they'll be free. So it's a weak Eibishter. It's in the state of Nisoyan, that's where our strength in Yiddishkeit happens. He says, Dehainu. What is Das? Das, what does it mean? That to know is to see. I don't see Hashem. So he says, just like a person feels that they're alive in such a real way that it's ke'ilu roya. It's almost like he sees that he has a soul. Shehi hamechayes aguf. Ubelada, without a nefesh, ein laguf kiyum v'chayes. He understands that you need a soul, even though he doesn't know what it is. He can't define it, but it's so real to him. It's like he sees it. So kach yehei murgash etzloi. He will sense kihu yizbarech chaya hachayim, that Hashem is the force of life of the world in such an intense way, ki'ilu roya chulu, as if he sees it. Ve'atam, why is it? Why is it Nisyonos mevi'in es ha'adam lidei das? Ki hine hanisyonos. These tests, hagam sheyordu behester ponim, lias mastirim al chayes Hashem u'dushasu yizbarich, although they've descended to a very dark place, but hine muster bahem chayes aliki, there's godliness hidden within. There's a deeper level. It's godliness unadjusted. It's pure elikus. Not Hashem is not considering, oh, let me see if he could handle it. Right? You know, you come You come to an exercise machine, they're like, what number should we make it for you? I don't know, whatever, It's like, Hashem is like, what level could I make it for you? In the Nisoyan, it's like the highest level. It's like pure. This is godliness complete, intense. Ki'inyan, just like it says in the Pasuk that Hashem Amar Le Kalel, that Hashem told Shimi to curse David HaMelech. Hashem told him to curse him. Chayes Eliki, there's godliness hidden within that encounter. Ukemay Merazal, Golu LeBavel, when they were exiled, Shechina Imohem. The Shechina is there. Not only is the Shechina there, the Shechina is the concealment. He, Hamistateres, Umislabeshes, Besar Shel Bavel. Who is the minister of Bavel that's oppressing the Jewish people? Yeah, who Hamoshel? The Hashem is there. V'liyas Yisrael Nesunim Tachto. V'hine, nowadays, one of the big Chalamoya trips is to go to the escape room. Right? That's where there's the joy in what's hidden. Right? How do we get out? V'hine achayis elikisha yarad mata mata. Behelim ve'ester ponim, the elikus that's in that concealment, like he said earlier, in the absence of health, in the absence of money. Yesodase Baharei Kodesh, Mimokim Gavoya Ma'oid. It's from a very special place. In the Maimer that we have here from the Tzemach Tzedek, he says that the levels that a person attains from a test is even greater than the idea of Bali Tshuva. Of B'makim Shebali Tshuva Oimdim. It's even deeper. And he says, it's naila, it's greater, mibadreges al yonis de kedusha, from kedusha. Kenoida, as is known from the mashal of nefilas hachoima, that when a wall falls, the higher stones fall farther. Elo shenofa v'yorad mata mata b'seisra madreges. Uksha'aymed ha'adam b'nisoyin, when a person withstands a test, umizgaber neged kol meineya, and he stays focused, he doesn't engage. Azai korea kol hamasachim hamastirim. All obstacles are torn. Anything that umalimim erve chayes Hashem, you just destroy all obstacles. And he says v'nimtza. So what's the outcome? Sheyoytze erve chayes Hashem mehelam alagilui. The pure intensity of godliness becomes revealed in your life. V'nimshach gilui zeh b'navshei, l'hamshech lo b'chinas das v'yizgalus elikusi yizborech. You receive intense revelation of godliness. I want to share. We don't have much time, so I want to share this a little story. Just in closing, I want to share a story to emphasize this point. When I was in yeshiva, at the end of the way it works in Chabad is that after the Beis Medrash, they send you out on shlichus to go to a yeshiva for a year, to whatever it is. At that time, the yeshiva was growing. They needed more places, so they reached out to Kfar Chabad, and they asked them if they would take a group of students. And they agreed, and I was in a group of 10 students that were sent to the yeshiva in Kfar Chabad. Reb Mendel Futefas was a great chassid, was still alive, and he was there. He was elderly, very, but he was there, and it was a special treat to get to meet him. My grandfather, whose home I lived in here in Crown Heights, was very excited that I was going to Kfar Chabad. He couldn't get over it. He was so excited about it. And a few weeks before I was off to Kfar Chabad, I was sitting at his table, Shabbos, and he was singing a Hasidic melody, and there was something different. He was very emotional, and I lived in his home for many years, and I never saw him like that. So after he finished singing, I said, I don't know why, but I said to him, what's the story with this song? Yeah. What's the story with the song? And he said to me, you'll come to Kfar Chabad, you'll ask Reb Mendel. You'll ask Reb Mendel Futefas about it. So I forgot about it. It just, we went, Anyway, some months go by, I don't know. And one Shabbos in Kfar Chabad, there's a Farbrengen, Shabbos afternoon, and they're singing that niggin. And Reb Mendel is so, he's such dveikus. And suddenly it all came back to me. I'm like, wait a second, this is the niggin, I gotta ask him. I gotta talk to him. So after the niggin, I said to Reb Mendel, my grandfather told me I should ask you what's with the niggin. So he says, you'll come to my house during the week. You'll come at night, we'll talk. So I went to his house, I come. And Reb Mendel said to me like this, he says, your grandfather was very active in the Russian underground. And he traveled a lot, and he also had to deal with a lot of money. For whatever they were doing, they needed for bribes, for whatever the activities were. So he's a young guy, single, running around everywhere like a Schwitzer with all kinds of money. And as a young person, there are tests. So I thought to myself, how could I inspire him? So there was a Yid that used to daven with such kavana, who had such a difficult life. And his last name was Garari, a different family, not related to the ones that live now in Crown Heights. And he says, I took him for a Shabbos to observe this person, to watch him daven. And this was a person who had no parnasa, and he had issues, there were mental health issues in the family at home. And when he davened, he would cry to Hashem, Hashem, give me the power to serve you. Those were the words that he, and he says it worked. That it really caught the heart of your grandfather. So that's in the Nisyonos, in the challenge, in that intensity comes the real connection to Hashem, that we could be, no matter what happens, we could do the right thing. Anyway, Yasher Koyach Yidden, thank you for making this possible. Atzlacha Rabbi.